No one had crossed his land in years. Until 6 beautiful girls with the same face knelt together, no one had crossed Elias's land in years. People in the nearby village often whispered about it, saying strange things happened there. Some claimed they had seen shadows moving through the trees when no one was there. Others said that the wind carried voices that sounded almost human, but when they went closer, the voices would vanish. Children were told not to go near the land, and even the bravest hunters avoided it. Everyone agreed on one thing: Elias's land was a place of mystery, a place to be feared. Elias had lived on the land for as long as anyone could remember. He was a man of solitude, someone who did not need company or distractions. His house, a large old structure made of dark stone, stood at the heart of the property. Around it stretched acres of thick forest, wide meadows, and streams that glittered in the sun. The house had been in his family for generations, and although it was old, it was carefully maintained. It was quiet there, too quiet for most people's liking, and that quiet suited Elias perfectly. He had chosen this life after losing those closest to him. Years ago, his parents had passed away, leaving him with the responsibility of the land. For a long time, he tried to leave, to be part of the world outside, but every attempt ended in disappointment. People were not kind, and trust was hard to come by. Slowly, he returned to the land, learning its rhythms, listening to its silence, and eventually finding peace in isolation. Elias's days followed a steady pattern. He would wake up before dawn, when the sky was still dark and the first birds began to sing. He would walk through the forest, noticing how the light fell through the branches, how the leaves rustled in the wind. He cared for his animals, tended the small garden behind the house, and repaired anything that broke. It was a simple life, but it was enough. There were no neighbors to worry about, no strangers at the door, no interruptions. It was just him and the land. The villagers, however, never stopped talking. They told stories that grew taller with each telling. Some said Elias was a wizard, capable of strange magic. Others whispered that he had made a deal with dark forces long ago, which was why no one dared enter his land. He never responded to these rumors. To him, they were meaningless, like echoes of voices that didn't matter. He lived his life by what he could see and feel, not by the stories of frightened people. Still, he noticed the signs of time passing. Occasionally, he would find footprints along the edge of his property, though they never belonged to any human he could identify. Sometimes he heard rustling at night, small noises that made him pause. Yet when he went to investigate, he found nothing. He had learned to live with these mysteries, to let the land speak in its own way. On one particular morning, the sun had just begun to rise. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and orange, and the air smelled fresh with dew. Elias walked along a narrow path he had carved through the forest years ago. Birds sang from the treetops, and a fox darted past, pausing to watch him with cautious eyes before disappearing again. Everything seemed as usual, peaceful and familiar. But then, something unusual caught his attention. At the far edge of the meadow, near a line of ancient oak trees, he saw movement. At first he thought it was a deer or another wild animal, but as he stepped closer, the shapes became clearer, and his heart began to beat faster. There, kneeling on the grass, were 6 young women. Elias froze. They were all beautiful, almost unnaturally so. But what was more astonishing was that they all looked exactly the same. Every feature, every expression, every movement mirrored the others perfectly. It was as if he was looking into a mirror 6 times over. Their hair, the color of spun gold, fell in soft waves around their shoulders. Their eyes, wide and calm, seemed to reflect the sky above. They wore simple white dresses that fluttered gently in the morning breeze. The women did not speak or move. They simply knelt there in perfect rows, as if waiting for something. Elias's mind raced. He had read about strange occurrences, about twins or doppelgangers, but never anything like this. He felt a mix of fear and fascination. Who were these girls? Why were they here? And most importantly, why had they chosen his land? Instinct told him to call out, to demand answers. But another part of him, the part that had grown accustomed to the mysteries of his land, told him to wait. He watched them silently, trying to understand their purpose. Even as he observed, he noticed the small details, the way they held their hands together, the slight tilt of their heads, the way the sunlight kissed their hair. There was something almost magical about them, something that made him forget his caution. After a long moment, he took a careful step forward. The grass was wet under his boots, and the sounds seemed unusually loud in the quiet morning. The girls did not flinch. They did not move. They simply remained kneeling, their faces serene and unreadable. Elias stopped a few meters away and studied them. Their presence was both unnerving and mesmerizing. He thought about the stories the villagers had told. Could these girls be spirits? Were they connected to the land in some way he had never understood? He had always believed that every corner of his property held secrets, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Yet, he also felt a strange calm. It was as if their presence was not threatening, but rather purposeful. Elias circled them slowly, examining each one. It was impossible to tell them apart. Even when he tried to focus on the smallest details, a freckle on the cheek, a strand of hair out of place, there were no differences. They were perfect copies of each other, moving and breathing in harmony. And though they were identical, he sensed individuality, a subtle uniqueness in the way each one seemed to hold her gaze, in the slight differences in posture. The forest around them seemed quieter than usual, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Birds had stopped singing, and the wind had paused. Elias felt the weight of the moment, a strange mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity. He realized that this encounter might change everything he had known about his life and his land. Minutes passed, and he did not speak. Instead, he observed. He noticed the dew on the grass, the way the sunlight touched the girls' hair, the gentle sway of their dresses. Everything was still, perfect, and impossibly beautiful. In that silence, he felt a connection to something greater than himself, a sense that the land and these girls held a story he was meant to discover. Eventually, he dared to step closer. The girls did not react. Their calmness was almost hypnotic. Elias's heart pounded in his chest, but he felt an unusual sense of trust forming. He could not explain it, but he knew that whatever their purpose was, it was not harmful. He knelt down a few steps away from them, lowering himself to their level. For a long while there was only silence. Then, one of the girls lifted her head slightly and looked directly at him. Her eyes were steady, full of something he could not name. In that moment, Elias felt a strange warmth, a sense of recognition, as if they had been waiting for him all along. And so, Elias stayed there, kneeling on the grass, observing the six girls with the same face. He did not know who they were, or why they had come, but he felt a stirring of something he had not felt in years. Curiosity, hope, and a faint glimmer of connection. For the first time in a long while, his land felt alive in a new way, full of possibilities he could not yet understand. Elias spent the rest of that morning in a strange mixture of awe and confusion. The six girls remained kneeling in the meadow, their identical faces turned toward him. He wanted to speak, to ask them who they were and why they were here, but something held him back. There was a quiet respect in their posture, an unspoken rule that he could feel but not understand. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Birds were beginning to sing again, but their songs were soft, almost hesitant, as if the forest itself had paused to watch the meeting unfold. Elias took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. He had lived alone for so long that any intrusion into his world felt like an earthquake. But there was also a pull, something inside him that said, these girls were not here to harm him. Slowly he approached them, each step measured and careful. His boots pressed into the soft grass, making a sound far louder than usual. The girls did not move. They stayed perfectly still, their identical white dresses flowing gently in the breeze. As he drew closer, he noticed the faint shimmer of morning dew on their hair, the way the sunlight touched each one equally, and the way their eyes seemed to follow him without blinking. It was almost impossible to look away. Elias stopped a few feet from them. The space between them felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His mind raced with questions. Were they human? Were they something else? How could 6 people look exactly the same? He had never seen anything like it, not in books, not in the old stories, not in the whispers of the villagers. Finally, he found his voice. Who are you? He asked, his tone cautious, almost trembling. There was no answer. The girls remained kneeling, silent and still, Elias's brow furrowed in confusion. He tried again, louder this time. Why are you here? What do you want? Still, they did not respond. But then, something shifted. One of the girls, the one on the far left, moved her hands slightly. She lifted them from the grass and folded them together in front of her chest. It was a small gesture, but it seemed deliberate, a signal that Elias could not ignore. He studied them more closely. Despite their identical appearances, he began to notice subtle differences. One had a slightly firmer posture, another's fingers twitched ever so slightly. A third seemed to exhale just a fraction differently. It was as if they were the same, yet not quite the same. Elias realized that perhaps they were individuals, even if they appeared identical. The meadow around them seemed alive with anticipation. The grass swayed gently, the trees whispered in the wind, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Elias took another step closer, his curiosity stronger than his fear. He could not explain why, but he felt drawn to them, as though some invisible thread connected him to these 6 mysterious figures. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the girls remained kneeling, never changing their position. Elias stayed nearby, moving slowly from one spot to another, observing them, trying to understand their purpose. He noticed that they did not eat or drink, and they did not speak. Yet there was a life in their eyes, a quiet intelligence that made him wonder how such calm could exist in beings so still. As the day grew warmer, Elias decided to try a different approach. He knelt down a short distance from them, lowering himself to their level. It felt strange to be kneeling after years of walking freely across his land. He watched their faces, studying each one carefully. Their eyes were clear, almost hypnotic, and for a moment he felt as if he were staring into 6 mirrors. He wanted to touch them, to verify that they were real, that they were human, but he hesitated. Something inside him warned against sudden movements. Instead, he reached out slowly, his hand hovering over the grass in front of the nearest girl. She did not flinch. She did not even blink. Elias's heart pounded in his chest. He felt both fear and wonder, a strange mixture that he could not name. Time seemed to stretch. The meadow remained quiet, the forest still, as if the world itself had paused to watch this unusual meeting. Elias began to feel a connection, subtle but undeniable. It was as if these girls had stepped out of the world for a reason, and that reason was tied to him. By late afternoon, Elias made a cautious decision. He would speak to them not as a stranger, but as someone willing to understand. "I do not know who you are," he said softly, "but you are on my land.
You do not need to kneel. You are welcome here."
If you wish to be." The girls did not rise. But then, something unexpected happened. One of them, the middle one, tilted her head slightly. It was the smallest of movements, barely noticeable, yet it carried meaning. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. He realized that they were listening, that they understood him, even if they did not speak. Elias decided to wait. He did not know for how long, but he sensed that rushing would accomplish nothing. He sat on the grass a few steps away, keeping his eyes on them. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip toward the horizon. Shadows stretched across the meadow, and the air grew cooler. Still, the girls remained in their position, serene and motionless. As evening approached, Elias finally noticed a change. The girls slowly shifted, moving in perfect unison. They knelt a little higher, their heads lifting as if acknowledging the fading light. Elias felt a sense of relief mixed with astonishment. They were alive, aware, and deliberate in every motion. He realized that their presence was not random. They had come with a purpose, though he did not yet know what it was. Night began to fall, and the first stars appeared in the sky. Elias lit a small lantern, the warm glow casting long shadows across the meadow. He thought about the long years he had spent alone, about the silence that had surrounded him, and about the strange wonder he now felt. For the first time in many years, his life seemed full of possibilities. He returned to his house for dinner, but his thoughts remained with the girls. He wondered where they had come from, what had brought them to his land, and what message they carried. Sleep did not come easily that night. His dreams were filled with visions of the 6 identical figures kneeling patiently in the meadow, their eyes watching him with quiet expectation. When he awoke the next morning, the girls were still there. Their positions had not changed, but there was a subtle energy in the air, a feeling that something was about to happen. Elias felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He knew that today might reveal more than yesterday had, and he resolved to approach them again, carefully, patiently, and respectfully. He took his breakfast outside, setting it on a small blanket near the edge of the meadow. The girls did not move, but he sensed that they were aware of him. He spoke softly, explaining who he was, how long he had lived on the land, and how he had come to know its quiet ways. They did not answer, but Elias felt a connection growing, a sense that communication was happening in ways beyond words. As the morning sun rose higher, Elias noticed something remarkable. The girls' movements were not random. When the wind blew through the meadow, they adjusted in perfect synchronization, tilting slightly, leaning gently, as if dancing to a rhythm only they could hear. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic, and beautiful. Elias could not take his eyes off them. By noon, he realized that the girls were teaching him something without speaking. They were showing him patience, attentiveness, and respect for the world around him. Every gesture, every motion, every breath seemed to carry meaning. Elias felt a profound sense of humility. He had thought he understood his land, But these girls had shown him that there were still mysteries, lessons waiting to be discovered. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip again. Elias had spent the entire day with them, moving cautiously, observing, learning. He felt a bond forming, one that transcended words. The girls were not just visitors, they were part of the land's story, part of its life. And slowly, Elias realized that their presence was not an intrusion, but an invitation, a chance to reconnect with the world, with himself, and with something far greater than he had ever known. That night, as he lay in bed, Elias felt a quiet excitement. He did not yet know what the girls wanted or why they had come, but he understood one thing: life on his land had changed forever. The days of solitude were over. Something new, something extraordinary, had arrived. And Elias knew that he would meet it with patience, respect, and an open heart, ready for the mysteries that lay ahead. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of grass and wildflowers. Elias stepped outside and paused, looking across the meadow. The 6 girls were still kneeling in the same formation, their white dresses glowing in the soft light. The rhythm of the world seemed to slow around them, as if the land itself had accepted their presence. Elias's mind was a mix of curiosity and cautious wonder. He had spent days observing them, trying to understand who they were and why they had come. Each day the same questions rose in his mind. Were they spirits or something more human? Could they communicate? And if so, how? And most importantly, why had they chosen his land? Today, he resolved, he would try something different. He would not simply watch them from a distance. He would attempt to connect with them, to understand their intentions. With careful steps, he approached the meadow, his eyes fixed on their calm faces. As he drew nearer, he noticed something new. The girls had shifted slightly overnight. Their hands, which had been folded neatly, were now resting gently on their knees. Their heads were tilted in a subtle, thoughtful way, as if they were aware of him even before he spoke. Elias felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they were beginning to respond to him. He stopped a few feet away and knelt down. "I do not know your names," he said softly, "and I do not know why you are here, but I want to understand."
I want to know who you are. For a long moment, nothing happened.
The girls remained still, their eyes calm and unblinking. Then one of them, the girl in the center, lifted her head slightly higher than the others. It was a small gesture, but Elias felt its significance. They were listening. They were aware. He took a deep breath and tried another approach. "Aha, ha ha. I have lived here alone for many years," he continued. "I know this land better than anyone. I care for it. But I do not know the world outside it, and I do not know why you have come. If you want to speak, I am ready to listen." The girls did not move, but their presence seemed to grow stronger. Elias noticed that each of them was subtly different, despite their identical appearances. One had a slight tilt to her head, another's eyes seemed brighter, and a third seemed to breathe a little differently. These small differences made him realize that, though they looked the same, they were individuals. He spent the morning observing them, learning to notice the small details, the way they adjusted their posture, the way their fingers twitched slightly when the wind blew, the way their eyes followed him even when he moved. Elias felt a strange connection forming, a sense that they were trying to communicate without words. By midday, he decided to try a different method. He placed a small basket of food on the grass, a simple offering of fruit and bread. He did not expect them to eat, but he hoped it might show his goodwill. The girls did not touch the food, but they shifted slightly as if acknowledging his gesture. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. They understood that he meant no harm. He spent the afternoon walking among them, careful not to disturb their formation. He noticed the way they moved together, in perfect harmony, almost as if they shared a silent language. It was mesmerizing, and Elias could not help but feel a growing sense of wonder. The girls were teaching him patience and observation, and in return he felt a quiet bond forming. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Elias noticed something remarkable. The girl's eyes seemed to follow the changing light, reflecting it in subtle, beautiful ways. He realized that their presence was not just a mystery to be solved, it was a lesson to be learned. They had come to show him something beyond understanding, something beyond words. That night, Elias stayed near the girls longer than usual. He lit a small lantern, its soft glow illuminating their faces. He spoke softly, recounting stories of the land, of the forest, of the animals he cared for. The girls did not respond with words, but he felt their attention, their quiet acknowledgement. It was as if they were listening, learning, and perhaps even teaching him in return. The next morning, Elias woke early, determined to observe them more closely. He noticed that the girls' formation had changed slightly again. They were still kneeling, but now they were arranged in a subtle pattern, a shape that he did not recognize. He wondered if it was a symbol, a message, or simply a way for them to communicate with each other. He approached them carefully, kneeling on the grass a few steps away. "I have watched you for days," he said softly. "I do not understand your purpose yet, but I feel that we are connected in some way. If you wish to show me, I am ready." One of the girls, the one on the far right, shifted slightly, raising her hand just a little. Elias took it as a signal, a small invitation to continue. He spent the morning moving among them, observing their subtle gestures, their small movements, and the way they seemed to respond to him without words. By midday, he realized that the girls were communicating through their actions, their posture, and their presence. Each subtle movement carried meaning, and Elias began to understand the language of their silence. It was a lesson in patience, observation, and connection. He felt a growing sense of trust, not only in them, but in the land itself, which seemed to embrace this new energy. As the day progressed, Elias decided to speak of his past. He told them about his parents, the years of solitude, the quiet life he had led on this land. He spoke of his fears, his regrets, and the loneliness that had been his companion for so long. The girls remained kneeling, their attention unwavering, as if absorbing every word. He realized that their presence was helping him face his own memories, his own emotions. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of release, a sense that he could confront the pain he had carried alone. The girls, in their quiet, unspoken way, were teaching him not only about themselves, but also about himself. As evening approached, Elias noticed another remarkable detail. The girls' shadows stretched long across the meadow, moving with the wind, yet remaining perfectly aligned with each other. It was as if they were part of the land itself, not separate from it. He felt a deep respect for them, for the patience and grace with which they carried themselves. That night, he stayed outside longer than ever. He lit a lantern near them and continued speaking softly, sharing stories of the forest, the animals, and the land's hidden corners. The girls remained kneeling, but Elias sensed that they were learning from him as much as he was learning from them. It was a silent exchange, a connection beyond words, a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. The next morning, Elias awoke before sunrise, eager to continue observing them. He noticed that they had shifted once more, forming a subtle curve, almost like a crescent. He wondered if it was intentional, a way of guiding him, or simply a natural pattern of their movements. He approached them, kneeling carefully a few steps away. "I am grateful for your presence," he said softly. "I do not yet understand everything, but I feel that you are here to teach me. I am ready to learn." One of the girls, the one in the center, lifted her head slightly and blinked. It was a simple gesture, but Elias felt its significance. They were aware, and they were acknowledging his words. He spent the day moving among them, observing, learning, and trying to communicate in ways beyond words. By midday, he realized that the girls were not only teaching him about patience and observation, but also about connection and trust. Each subtle gesture, each small movement, was a lesson in understanding without speaking. He felt a growing sense of hope, a sense that his life was changing in ways he had never imagined. As the sun began to set, Elias reflected on the past few days. The girls had come to his land, and their presence had transformed it. The meadow felt alive, the forest seemed more vibrant, and even the air carried a sense of anticipation. He knew that their purpose was not yet fully revealed, but he also knew that he was ready for whatever was to come. That night, as he lay in bed, he felt a quiet excitement. The girls had brought a new rhythm to his life, a sense of connection he had not felt in years. He understood that their presence was a gift, a chance to learn, to grow, and to face the mysteries of his land with an open heart. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the gentle pull of anticipation. He did not know what the next day would bring, but he was ready. The girls, kneeling in the meadow, had changed his world, and he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would reveal secrets, teach lessons, and transform not only his land, but his life itself. The morning sun cast a warm golden light across Elias's land, illuminating the meadow where the 6 girls knelt. Over the days, he had grown used to their presence, but today felt different. There was a quiet intensity in the air, as if something important was about to happen. Elias felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. He did not know what the day would bring, but he knew it would not be ordinary. As he approached the meadow, the girls remained kneeling in perfect formation, their identical faces serene and calm. But Elias noticed a subtle shift in their demeanor. Their hands, which had previously rested lightly on their knees, were now folded together as if in prayer or concentration. Their eyes, always steady, seemed to shine with a faint inner light. Elias paused a few steps away, sensing that this was a moment to observe rather than speak. He watched them closely, studying their movements. Even in stillness, there was a rhythm to their actions. Every breath, every tilt of the head, every small shift in posture seemed deliberate. It was as if they were communicating silently, not just with each other, but with the land itself. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. He had never witnessed anything like this. Hours passed with the same quiet tension. Elias tried speaking softly to them, sharing fragments of his life, stories from his past, and even thoughts he had never voiced to anyone. The girls did not respond with words, but he felt their attention, their awareness. It was as though they were absorbing every detail, every emotion, learning from him while remaining mysterious. Then, just as the sun reached its highest point, one of the girls, the one in the center, lifted her head slightly higher than the others. This small gesture was enough to catch Elias's full attention. Slowly, deliberately, the girl moved one hand and pointed toward a large, ancient oak tree at the edge of the meadow. Her movement was precise, graceful, and meaningful. Elias followed her gesture with his eyes, feeling a sudden surge of curiosity. The tree she indicated had stood on his land for generations, its trunk thick and gnarled, its branches stretching high into the sky. It was a place he had often walked by, but he had never noticed anything unusual about it. Now he sensed that the tree held a secret, one that the girls were urging him to discover. With cautious steps, Elias approached the tree. The girls remained kneeling, their eyes fixed on him, their expressions calm but expectant. As he reached the base of the tree, he noticed something he had never seen before, a small indentation in the bark, shaped almost like a handle. Curious, he pressed it gently. To his surprise, a section of the tree's bark shifted, revealing a hidden compartment within the trunk. Inside, he found an old, dust-covered book. Its cover was worn, but golden letters spelled out a name he recognized instantly. It was the name of one of his ancestors. Elias felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He had stumbled upon something that connected the girls, his land, and his family's past in a way he could not yet understand. He opened the book carefully. The pages were filled with sketches, notes, and descriptions, some written in a language he recognized, others in symbols that were strange and unfamiliar. As he flipped through the pages, a story began to emerge. A story of his family, their connection to the land, and the mysterious presence of 6 identical figures who had appeared throughout history during times of change. Elias realized that the girls kneeling in his meadow were not random visitors. They were part of a legacy, a tradition that had persisted for generations. The book described them as guardians, protectors, and guides, beings who appeared in moments of great need to teach, to guide, and to reveal hidden truths. His heart pounded as he read, understanding at last the importance of their presence. Returning his gaze to the meadow, Elias felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. The girls remained kneeling, their hands still folded, their eyes calm and steady. It was clear to him now that they were here to guide him, to help him understand not only his land, but also himself. They were teaching him lessons he had never known he needed to learn. Over the next few hours, Elias continued to study the book, cross-referencing the notes with what he observed in the girls' movements. He noticed patterns, connections, and subtle signals that mirrored the lessons described in the book. Each day, each action of the girls seemed to reinforce the wisdom of his ancestors, blending past and present into a single living experience. By evening, Elias had gained a deeper understanding. The girls were not only messengers, they were a bridge between his family's past and his present. Their presence was a reminder that the land he had always considered a place of solitude was also a place of learning, reflection, and growth. The quiet days of observation had prepared him for this revelation, teaching him patience, attention, and the power of subtlety. That night, Elias lit a lantern and brought the book to the meadow. He sat near the girls, carefully placing the ancient pages on the grass. As he read aloud, he noticed that the girls' heads tilted slightly with each passage, their attention focused on the words. Though they did not speak, their presence felt alive, responsive, and deeply engaged. The book revealed stories of guidance, warnings, and lessons that had been passed down through generations. It spoke of moments when the land had been at risk and how the 6 figures, always identical in appearance, had appeared to restore balance, teach wisdom, and protect the future. Elias realized that he was living one of those moments now, that the girls were here to ensure that he, too, would understand and grow from the experience. Over the next few days, Elias worked closely with the girls, observing their gestures, their patterns, and their quiet instructions. He learned to notice subtle cues, the direction of their gaze, the timing of their movements, and the way they responded to changes in the wind and light. Each detail carried meaning, revealing lessons in awareness, mindfulness, and connection to the land. He also began to understand that the girls were more than guides. They were reflections of his own potential. Their presence encouraged him to see himself differently, to embrace patience, clarity, and empathy. For the first time in years, Elias felt that he was not alone, that he was part of a living story much larger than himself. One afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Elias noticed a new gesture. The girl in the center raised her hand slowly, as if inviting him to follow. He rose from the grass and walked toward her, feeling a sense of trust and understanding he had never experienced before. The girls moved in perfect harmony, leading him to a small clearing he had never explored. In the clearing, Elias found a hidden spring, its water clear and sparkling. The girls knelt around it, forming a circle, their eyes fixed on the water. Elias understood instantly. The spring was a symbol of renewal, clarity, and life. The girls had led him here to show him the heart of his land, the place where all learning and growth began. He knelt beside them, feeling the cool water on his fingers, and for the first time truly appreciated the depth of their purpose. They were not here to frighten him, nor were they simply curiosities. They were teachers, guides, and reminders of the connection between life, land, and spirit. Elias felt a profound gratitude, a sense that his solitude had prepared him for this encounter, shaping him to understand and appreciate their presence. As night fell, Elias returned to his house carrying the lessons of the day in his heart. The girls remained in the clearing, their silhouettes bathed in the soft light of the moon. He realized that their purpose was not only to teach him but also to remind him of the legacy of his family, the power of patience, and the value of observation and respect for life. For the first time in many years, Elias felt that he belonged not only to his land, but to a larger story, a story that included the past, the present, and the promise of the future. The girls, kneeling silently in the moonlight, had revealed their true purpose: to guide, to teach, and to awaken the wisdom that had always existed within him. The morning sun rose slowly over Elias's land, casting long shadows across the meadow. The 6 girls remained kneeling where he had first seen them, their identical faces calm and serene, yet there was an air of quiet anticipation. Elias felt a deep sense of purpose that he had never felt before. Over the past days, he had learned to observe, to listen, and to understand the silent lessons of their presence. Today, he felt, the journey would reach its most important moment. He approached them carefully, as he had every morning, but this time he did not kneel immediately. He paused at the edge of the meadow, watching them with a mixture of respect and curiosity. There was a subtle energy radiating from the group, a feeling that something profound was about to be revealed. Elias realized that these girls were no longer strangers or mysteries. They were guides, teachers, and reflections of the wisdom he had carried unknowingly within himself. For the first time, he spoke without hesitation. "I have watched you. I have learned from you. And I have tried to understand your purpose. I feel that you are here to guide me, to help me see what I could not see before. If that is true, I am ready for the next step." The girls did not respond with words, but Elias felt their acknowledgement. Their movements were subtle, synchronized, and deliberate. Slowly they began to rise from the grass, one by one, moving as if guided by an invisible rhythm. Elias watched in awe as they formed a perfect circle around him, their hands extended slightly, almost as if inviting him to join them. He stepped forward, feeling a mixture of reverence and excitement. Kneeling at the center of the circle, Elias noticed the air around him seemed different, lighter, warmer, filled with a gentle energy that he could feel in his bones. The girl's eyes met his, each gaze calm and unwavering, and for the first time he felt completely seen and understood. The leader of the group, the girl who had always been in the center, moved her hand slowly, gesturing toward the sky and then to the earth. Elias understood that this was more than a simple gesture. It was a symbol of connection, a reminder that life, land, and spirit were all intertwined. He felt a sense of peace wash over him, a feeling he had not known in years of solitude. He looked around at the other girls, noticing the subtle differences in their movements, though their faces remained identical. Each one carried a unique energy, a quiet personality that shone through their synchronized actions. Elias realized that they were not just guides, they were companions, mirrors of his own potential, reflecting patience, empathy, and understanding. Time seemed to slow as he remained kneeling in the circle. The girls shifted slightly, forming patterns that he did not fully understand, yet he sensed their meaning. It was a language beyond words, a communication that transcended human speech. Elias felt a profound connection to them, to the land, and to the generations that had come before him. As the sun climbed higher, Elias felt a sudden urge to speak, not to ask questions, but to share his gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice steady. "Thank you for coming to my land, for guiding me, and for helping me see what I could not see before. I do not fully understand your purpose yet, but I feel that my life has changed because of you." The girls remained still for a moment, then one of them extended her hand toward Elias. He hesitated for only a second before reaching out and taking it. The warmth of her touch surprised him, though it was gentle and calming. One by one, the others did the same, and soon Elias felt a circle of warmth, a bond that went beyond words or understanding. He realized that their presence was not only a guide to the land or to knowledge, but also a bridge to his own heart. For years he had lived in solitude, carrying grief, fear, and loneliness. But the girls, through their silent lessons and careful guidance, had helped him open his mind, his spirit, and his heart. Hours passed in this quiet communion. Elias and the girls remained in the meadow, kneeling and observing, sharing an energy that was both powerful and gentle. The land around them seemed to hum with life. The trees swayed in a rhythm that matched the movement of the girls, and the wind whispered softly through the grass. It was as if nature itself was celebrating this moment of connection. By evening, Elias felt a deep sense of clarity. The girls had shown him not only the hidden parts of the land, but also the hidden parts of himself. He had learned patience, attentiveness, and the importance of subtlety. He had learned to listen without judgment, to observe without interference, and to respect life in all its forms. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the girls knelt once more, returning to the position they had first taken when he had seen them. Elias knelt among them, feeling the weight and the significance of the moment. He knew that their purpose had been fulfilled, not in words or actions, but in the lessons they had shared and the transformation they had inspired. He looked around the meadow, seeing the land with new eyes. The streams glimmered with a clarity he had never noticed before. The trees seemed taller, more alive, their branches reaching out as if welcoming him. Even the smallest flowers and blades of grass carried a beauty and significance that he had overlooked in his solitude. Elias felt a profound gratitude for the girls, for the land, and for the life he had been given. That night, Elias returned to his house but did not feel the usual solitude. Instead, he felt connected to the girls, to the land, and to himself. He lit a lantern and sat by the window, reflecting on the days that had passed. The girls had not spoken, yet they had communicated more deeply than any words could. Their presence had been a mirror, reflecting his own strengths, weaknesses, and potential. As he drifted into sleep, Elias dreamed of the meadow, the girls, and the hidden spring they had led him to. In his dreams, he saw the land in a way he never had before, alive, vibrant, and full of energy. The girls were present, their movements graceful, their eyes calm, and he felt a sense of completion, of understanding, and of connection. When he awoke, the meadow was bathed in morning light once again. The girls were still kneeling, but something had changed. There was a subtle light around them, a feeling of quiet resolution. Elias approached them, kneeling at the center of their circle one last time.
I understand now, he said softly. I understand your purpose, and I am grateful.
I will honor this land, your guidance, and the lessons you have shared. The girls remained kneeling for a few moments. Then, one by one, they rose. Their movements were synchronized, graceful, and purposeful. Elias watched, feeling a sense of awe. Slowly, they began to walk toward the edge of the meadow, moving as one, their white dresses glowing in the soft morning light. He followed them with his eyes, not moving to stop them. He understood that this was the moment of farewell. Their purpose had been fulfilled, and now it was time for him to carry forward the lessons they had given. As they disappeared into the forest at the edge of his property, Elias felt a quiet peace settle over him. He returned to the meadow, kneeling where they had been, and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt truly connected, not just to the land, but to life itself. The solitude he had once cherished now felt complete, filled not with loneliness, but with wisdom, understanding, and gratitude. In the days that followed, Elias continued his life on the land, but nothing felt the same. The streams, the trees, and the meadows were alive with new meaning. He worked with renewed purpose, caring for the land, observing its rhythms, and remembering the lessons of the 6 girls who had come to guide him. Though the girls never returned, their presence remained with him in every moment. Their silent teachings had changed him, opening his heart and mind to the beauty and mystery of life. He understood now that solitude was not emptiness. It was a space for reflection, growth, and connection, and that guidance could come in the most unexpected forms. Elias had crossed a threshold. The land that had once been a place of isolation was now a place of learning, of life, and of transformation. And though the girls had vanished, their lesson remained eternal. That patience, observation, and connection were the keys to understanding, and that even in the quietest moments, there is always a possibility for wonder, growth, and renewal. He looked out over the meadow, feeling the wind on his face, the warmth of the sun on his skin, and a sense of profound gratitude in his heart. The girls had taught him to see, to listen, and to feel. They had come to his land in silence, kneeling in stillness, and in doing so, they had changed his life forever. Elias smiled softly, knowing that though they were gone, he was never truly alone. The land, the lessons, and the spirit of the 6 girls would always be with him, guiding him, teaching him, and reminding him of the beauty, mystery, and endless possibilities of life. And for the first time in years, Elias felt fully alive,